Hello and welcome in. I am Greg Smith, recruiting extraordinaire of Hail Varsity. I am joined this week for the recruiting video of the week by Steve Marik, staff writer of Hail Varsity. Steve, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Greg. Yeah, just got back from that 7-on-7 tournament in Lincoln on Sunday, and then a couple days before that, the first Friday Night Lights event of the month of June. So yeah, busy time of the year for you, buddy.
Yeah, that is definitely one way to put it. Someone commented to me on Twitter and asked if I actually got to sleep. I did work in a nap, and I did sleep last night, so that's good. A little longer than I usually do. I joke with you that I do get up at 4 a.m. on a regular basis. I did not make it up at 4 a.m. This morning. I think I slept in till 6. And so yeah, and then I got to writing. I think the Brock Knudsen interview is the one that I had to write up when I woke up at 6 a.m. But we are not here to talk about my writing and the things that we had to work on, but we are here to talk about something related to that, which is it was a huge recruiting weekend for Nebraska. And I've written this several times now, the biggest recruiting weekend of the Scott Frost era, and it's really actually not close, especially when it comes to the sheer number of official visitors that they had in town. They had 13 official visitors in town. I believe that eight or nine was the high water mark, and that was the first. It was the first home game against Ohio State, where they had like Jackson Bratton and Logan Smothers and all of those guys were kind of in town for that game. If you remember, Jackson Bratton, who ended up at Oklahoma or ended up at Alabama and then transferred out of there. But it actually started off before we could even get to Friday Night Lights. The fireworks started with a commitment of Jaden Doss, 3-star wide receiver out of the Kansas City area. I guess, Steve, what kind of stuck out to you about Jaden Doss now in the days that we've had to kind of digest that?
Yeah, I guess we'll get your thoughts on this, but I didn't expect one before the camp started. I guess I thought it would happen maybe like during it or after it, after he had some time to go through everything. But yeah, I mean, Jaden Doss, I think that's a pretty big pickup, obviously, from considering where he's from to the Kansas City area. I think that's really important. It speaks to Bill Busch, how important of a hire he's turning out to be. Not only, we'll see what the special teams looks like in the fall, but off the field in recruiting and making relationships with key players and really key areas of the country where Nebraska really needs to maybe just get a stronger foothold in. Boy, Jaden Doss getting that commitment was a heck of a start for Nebraska's June kind of recruiting month here. So I was kind of interested to get your thoughts. Were you surprised that Doss kind of pulled the trigger before the camp?
No, I was not surprised. I'd gotten only because I'd gotten wind of it, but I was also not surprised because I think this makes sense kind of in the pecking order of where we are with wide receiver right now. And I think that this is going to be a real intriguing storyline for this summer. First of all, I should say too, I agree with you on the Bill Busch factor here. I think that Jaden did say that I asked him directly about Coach Busch, and we have an interview with Jaden up on hailvarsity.com kind of detailing why he picked Nebraska. And he said that Bill Busch, man, my relationship is different with him. He's a real energetic guy, is the way that he described Bill Busch. And if any of you have followed along with Bill in his coaching career, you know that is definitely the case. But Jaden got kind of the dream team set up, right? As you end up having your initial contact be Bill Busch from Nebraska, and then your position coach will end up being Mickey Joseph. That's a hard combination for teams to beat, right, on the recruiting trail, especially with him being close by and Nebraska really locking in on Kansas City as a place that they want to recruit this recruiting cycle. And I really like him as a prospect. He's like 6'1", 200 pounds. He's a former running back. That's a real physical kid. The thing that really jumps out to me is one, you can tell that he's a former running back by the way that he likes to run guys over after he catches the football. And he's physical and likes to block, right? And so those sorts of things and those intangibles sometimes can really tell you about the toughness of a kid. Sometimes, not all the time, but a lot of times it can. I really like Jaden as a prospect, and they just so happen to have three other big time wide receivers that they really like on campus this past weekend. As we kind of got into Friday Night Lights, and you look out there, and the camp had some really nice talent that participated in that. But I think the dominant storyline from the weekend was the 13 official visitors. And like I mentioned, there were three wide receivers here on campus too. You had Malachi Coleman, the Lincoln East 4-star wide receiver, right? I guess athlete, I guess you can call him. He can go, either way, play either side of the ball. And then you had the recent LSU decommit that had previously committed to Mickey Joseph, who so happened to get on campus right away, Amari Miller from Louisiana. And then you had Barry Jackson, kind of a slot guy out of Georgia, all three of which Nebraska is very high on and get them in for their first official visits. That wide receiver picture is really shaping up nicely for the Huskers. Oh, and Joshua Manning, who I keep forgetting because he came a little bit later. His official visit started on Saturday, and we saw him yesterday kind of milling around at 7-on-7. But he's another big-bodied kid that's a good-looking prospect. Nebraska is kind of in a really nice spot when it comes to wide receiver recruiting right now, which you would think would be the case with Mickey Joseph.
Yeah, it was really kind of interesting watching or reading those names. Amari Miller, of course, Joshua Manning, Barry Jackson Jr. And then, of course, you have Jonathan Bo Hewley, that massive offensive line prospect and current Georgia commit. What do you think about him coming up and going through his visit here with Lincoln?
Yeah, that one's going to be interesting because I think what Nebraska does a really good job of on these official visits is really pushing the recruitment forward and getting in a better spot than they entered the weekend in, right? Like almost every kid says Lincoln was different than what I expected. The key difference here is Bo Hughley, who's like 6'7", 300 pounds, and he's all of that, right? Georgia commit, like you mentioned, really top offensive line prospect, one of the top offensive line prospects in the country. It was his second time in Lincoln in just a couple of months, right? And so this is a return trip after coming out for the spring game. And there were a number of kids that fit in that boat. And I'm just fascinated by Nebraska's ability to be able to get on those kids' radar, get them here for unofficials for the spring game, do enough to then get them back immediately for an official visit. We'll see. It's probably a long shot with Hughley. Like I would say that he's probably the toughest pull of anyone that they had on campus this weekend. It's just going to be hard to flip a top prospect offensive lineman from Georgia that's committed to Georgia. Georgia just won the last national championship. They're going to continue on a roll out there. Like that one's just going to be tough, right? But there are other Georgia prospects that I think that Nebraska had on campus this weekend, and they had a trio of Cedar Grove High School prospects that were all on campus this weekend together. I think Nebraska put themselves in much better position with all three of them, including Kayan Lee, who's one of the best cornerback prospects in the entire country. And it's basically Nebraska and Ohio State. And there's one other school that I'm missing that's kind of in that Clemson-ish area, or Oregon. Oregon is the other team that he told me he's going to official visit. That story went live yesterday. Sorry, too many names and schools. That's one that will be interesting to watch here as we go forward. Adonijah Green, also a Cedar Grove High School edge guy, 6'6", 210 pounds. If you saw the pictures online or on hailvarsity.com, he's the one with a super long wingspan, right? He's a really interesting prospect, committed to Louisville, but I think Nebraska is giving Louisville all they can handle right now.
Yeah, I mean, with Green, I mean, you showed me that picture of him, and the first thing that I noticed is his arms. Like, my gosh,
it's just so long.
His wingspan has got to be massive, and that's exactly what you look like in an edge rusher. Just somebody that can get their hands on an offensive tackle before they can get their hands on him, and just kind of do work from there. So that was really interesting. But then after Friday Night Lights, a couple of days after, was a 7-on-7 camp. What was your? I was there as well with you, tagging along. So. To me, it seemed like it was the Malachi Coleman show, obviously. So he was kind of just the big dog over there, and a lot of the Nebraska coaches were kind of eyeing him pretty much all day and seeing what he could do. And boy, it was impressive. He made a lot of I guess difficult catches seem really easy. Is the biggest takeaway that I had with him. But yeah, just nobody really looked like him physically over there. I mean, he was just an incredible looking athlete for sure at 6'5", around 195, 185 pounds. So and then you can talk about the press conference that he had afterwards, just a very efficient athlete as well, Malachi Coleman is. So I really enjoyed that part about it. So what are your overall thoughts on the 7-on-7 camp and then the Malachi Coleman press conference after?
Yeah, I thought the 7-on-7 camp, I agree with you that it was the Malachi Coleman show, and in part because I did not know that he was going to participate in that camp. I knew he was on Nebraska Elite, and he's one of the star players on that team, and that they were competing, but I didn't know whether or not he would go straight from his official visit at Nebraska to then doing the 7-on-7 camp and competing at a high level at that, yeah. Right? We've seen this. It kind of reminded me, and I don't know if you remember this, a couple of years ago, Blaze Gunnerson had an official visit for a Friday Night Lights weekend, and he actually delayed the beginning of his Friday Night Lights or his official visit so that he could work out and participate at the Friday Night Lights camp, because there's a rule that if you're on your official visit, if the clock has started, you can't be in the camp, right? And so he actually wanted so badly to compete in that camp and to be coached by Mike Dawson, and he worked with Garrett Nelson a lot that day too, I remember, that he waited to start that. And that always kind of stuck in my mind, kind of just about his work ethic. And so it will always stick with me now that Malachi Coleman had really no reason to go out there and compete. Like, it wasn't like Nebraska was going to move him down on the board and he was no longer going to be their number one overall prospect if he didn't play in that thing. But he did go and play in it, and he showed that he had competitive fire. All the coaches were there watching him, including Scott Frost. Like, basically everyone that was in the building came out there to watch Malachi Coleman. Mickey Joseph had a keen eye on what was going on out there. And I do agree that, man, he's a smooth athlete. Like, I think that's the best way to describe him, that makes those catches that really aren't routine. He makes them look routine. And it was really neat to see. Plus, we got to see some other guys on his team. Sebastian Circle, the quarterback, Kyrell Jordan, guy at Bellevue West, because Bellevue West always has these guys at wide receiver that will be out there making plays. And so there was a lot happening at that tournament yesterday, including kind of the who's who of Nebraska coaches and staffers checking things out. And as far as that press conference goes, listen, it feels like mixed reaction to the press conference and someone holding a press conference or a prospect holding a press conference after an official visit.
Yeah.
But I will say this, I think it was incredibly smart. And I honestly,
I don't understand the backlash of it. He's obviously, in my opinion, just looking on the outside of this thing, look, he's going to be taking 30 to 40 individual phone calls. Why not just, with a handful of local media, get the whole thing over with in 9 to 10 minutes like he did? I mean, that's incredibly smart for the kid to do. And I think shows maturity is just, if he doesn't want to deal with all of it, he can do it. He can handle this recruitment however he wants.
Yeah, it's his recruitment.
Yeah, exactly. If he wants to get it all done in a 10-minute session outside of a coffee shop, by all means, do it, Malachi. So I really appreciated that he kind of wanted to do that. I'm a big fan of him doing that.
Yeah, and you know what? To me though, the people that have like are saying, "Oh, why would you do that?" are people that didn't necessarily watch it. Because if you watch it, you'll know what I kind of have known from talking to him and the family ahead of time and kind of following along with his recruitment since, a year ago when he only had the Northern Iowa offer, and now he's blown up, is that he's an incredibly likable kid. Like in a really he's a really thoughtful kid. Like you could just tell, you can see how, and he's a kid that if you look at, and follow what he's been doing with NIL stuff and kind of using his platform to give back to foster homes and that sort of thing. Like there's a lot there that it's even more than just him on the field. Right. And I think his 7-on-7 Coach Evans talked to me about that before when I wrote the story on those guys a couple of months ago, in that when you recruit Malachi Coleman, you're not just getting, a borderline 5-star player, you're getting a 5-star person. And I think that is really evident when you see him speak in these settings, because he did a great job, I thought, in a situation that honestly would intimidate a lot of kids that are still 16 years old. Yeah,
absolutely. And, just to go back into what he was kind of talking about as well, I think he's going to be, he said that he was going to hold off on his recruitment and his commitment until December. Correct?
Yeah. He said he's going to take it to the end.
Yeah. And then he also said that, he's thinking about, doing track as well at the school that he picks. And that kind of him talking about wanting to, you know, break state records and stuff in track next year at his high school year, and he's not looking to be an early enrollee wherever he goes. I think that just speaks to, you know, it reminds me of what Bill Bush and Brian Applewhite talk about when they're looking at future prospects, is that multi-sport athlete who doesn't just, you know, want to ball out on a football field. He wants to, you know, do well in other sports. And I just think, you know, when he was talking about that, I'm like, dang, that's exactly what Brian Applewhite and Mickey Joseph and Bill Bush were all talking about when they're looking at these athletes that they want to recruit, is super competitive guys. And I just see that with Malachi Coleman. And I think he's, wherever he winds up going, I think he's going to have a pretty big fan base of people following him and hoping and rooting for him and hoping he does well. So yeah, he's just he seems like a really special kid and one that you want to root for.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of those kids that you look at him and you're like, okay, I think that kid, without sports, I think that kid is going to be really successful in life. He's going to find a way to be really successful. But yeah, it was just a huge weekend of recruiting activity. And there will be much more to come as we're continuing to update you and get visitor reaction from the weekend. I think Maverick Noonan's interview went live this morning, got Brock Knutson coming up, and a handful of others that are coming down the pipe as well. Make sure you guys are subscribe to hailvarsity.com so you can get all of that information and more, because there's a lot more Husker coverage to be found on hailvarsity.com. Make sure you are also subscribing to this YouTube channel to get notifications when these videos go live. Comment, like them up. Make sure that you guys are keeping that conversation going in the comments, and we will talk to you guys next week.